Welsh rugby chiefs have expressed disappointment at the RFU, complaining about attempts by Wales to recruit players from England. The RFU are to ask World Rugby for help in preventing Wales and other countries from targeting players at English club academies. But the WRU have today questioned these comments. They point to the large number of talented young Welsh players that are being lured across the border by free scholarships at English fee-paying schools and colleges, with 19 Welsh qualified players currently at one institution. WRU head of rugby performance Geraint John Wright pictured with Wales coach Warren Gatland, and they stress the vast majority of players they are targeting in England were actually born in Wales and, in many cases, developed here. The contentious remarks from the RFU appeared in an article in the Times newspaper. They refer to other countries actively scouting players at English club academies and say they will be taking up the matter with World Rugby. "I'm just disappointed at the comments," said WRU head of rugby performance Geraint John. "It could be seen as a little bit ironic that the RFU should be saying this about us. It works both ways." John says scouts from English clubs and colleges are regularly in Welsh regional age grade teams looking for gifted players. Gloucester's Welsh international Ross Moriarty in action for the Lions this summer. "We ran a Super Series event at the Arms Park last season, where we had 6 regional U18s teams, one each from the Blues, Scarlets, Ospreys, Dragons, North Wales and Exiles," he said. "They were squads of 30, so that's 180 players. You looked up in the stand and there were all these scouts from England there. They are in our regional age grade teams all the time. There are also teachers here that are linked with English clubs. Welsh youngsters are ending up at schools and colleges like Hartpury, Millfield, Oakham School, Clifton, Rugby School and Filton, which have strong rugby setups. For example, there are 19 players at Hartpury who are eligible for Wales," said John. Cardiff Blues lost 7 players to them from their programme this year. "English fee-paying schools and colleges are offering free scholarships to our players. When you are offered a £35,000 a year private education for free, it's hard for kids and their parents to say no, and we totally understand that. What happens is once players are in the English system, they get picked up by club academies, who often have links with the colleges. The RFU might argue it's the colleges doing the initial recruitment, not them, but they support the club academies which have links with the colleges. The big concern we have is some lads are being discouraged from playing age-grade rugby for Wales by their clubs." Geraint John with Welsh Rugby Union Chief Executive Martin Phillips Image Hugh Evans Picture Agency. "We hear about players being put under pressure to not come and play for us on the basis they might not get contracts in future if they do. There are examples of players having missed out on going to a Junior World Cup as a result. 2 players have missed out on playing in this competition and gaining a fantastic experience in the last 2 years." The RFU point to the investment clubs put into players at academy level, and the suggestion is compensation should be paid if Welsh qualified youngsters are lured away by the WRU. In the Times article, a RFU spokesman is quoted as saying, "We are aware that other nations actively scout English players in our academies. We are looking carefully at this, with the clubs who invest in developing these players for the good of English rugby, and we will be discussing this with World Rugby." One example given in the article is Lions back rower Ross Moriarty, who came through the Gloucester Academy and played age-grade rugby for England before electing to follow in the footsteps of his father, Paul, and uncle, Richard, by representing Wales. There has been much speculation that Moriarty will move from the Cherry and Whites to the Scarlets at the end of this season in order to remain eligible for Wales under the new 60-cap selection policy. Bristol's Welsh fly half Callum Sheedy. This presumably would be the kind of situation where the RFU might argue the case for compensation. However, while Moriarty was part of the Gloucester Academy, his rugby education began at Gorsinan RFC and Morriston Comprehensive School in Swansea, and he also played for the Ospreys at both U16s and U18s level. In John's view, the picture being laid out by the RFU is only half the story. They talk about wanting compensation for looking after players from 17 to 21, he said. But what about what we do with them between 7 and 17? What about all the time and effort we put into them in Welsh rugby? They have recognised them at age of 16 or 17, but they have been recognised because they came through our club and school system. Perhaps the compensation system should start at 7, not 17. John acknowledges the WRU are looking at players in England with a view to bringing them to the regions, but says it's important to understand the context. "Just about all of the ones we are targeting are born in Wales," he said. Scrum half Harry Randall captained Wales U16 before switching allegiance to England. In a lot of cases, they have been picked up by English rugby in their late teens. We just want them back. The RFU talk about the money that has been invested by the English system in developing these players, but many have been in our system originally. John points to the recent case of a Wales U16's player. He's a Pencoed comp boy, hes come through our system, he said. We did everything we could to keep him here. We invited him up to the Centre of Excellence when the Lions were there last summer. He did a kicking session with Neil Jenkins and Greg Laidlaw. But, at the end of the day, he still decided to leave. It's hard for kids to turn down these scholarships. Swansea-born Matt Prothero has played for England U20s. Our job is to make sure if they are away we keep monitoring them, supporting them, in their games, linking with their teachers. We want to make sure they realise they are not forgotten, that we want them back, that they mean something to us and that we care, which is so important. Among the Welsh-born and raised youngsters currently on English club books are Bristol backs Matt Prothero and Callum Sheedy, who attended Hartpury and Millfield respectively. Swansea-born Prothero, who has recently moved from Gloucester, has represented England at U18s and U20s level. There's also the case of scrum half Harry Randall, who was born in Slough, but grew up in the Amman Valley and captained Wales U16 before switching allegiance to England, playing for their U20s, progressing through Hartpury and the Gloucester Academy. In all, there are more than 90 Welsh qualified players in the top two flights of English rugby. Among those playing in the Aviva Premiership, Bridgend-born Bath centre Max Clark, Leicester's Pembrokeshire back rower Luke Hamilton, Newcastle lock Max Davies, Sales Llandudno-born back five forward George Knopp, Worcester's second row Hugh Taylor, London Irish centre Johnny Williams, Gloucester flanker Lewis Ludlow and Cardiff-born Sale number 8 Sam Moore.